Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the WM32 Football Podcast. I'm your host, Nelson, for today. I'm joined by Wes, and today we are going to be doing a recap of the January transfer window. Today is the 2nd of February 2021. The transfer window closed last night. At 11 p.m. And today on this episode, myself and Wes will be doing a recap and discussing the winners and losers of this transfer window. Now, before we get started, just a reminder, please follow us on all our social media platforms at WM32 Football. And do not forget that the shop is now live and direct. So as you can see, Wes is showcasing the merchandise. If you'd like to get your WM32 Football merchandise, then please visit us at wm32football.com/shop. So January transfer window. As I said, the transfer window closed at 11 p.m. last night. Normally deadline day is full of intriguing and blockbuster deals. We didn't see a lot of that last night, and you could even argue during the whole during the whole January transfer window, there wasn't a lot of blockbuster deals. So before we get started, just to give you a quick overview that in terms of spending, the top 5 leagues spent deals worth over £260 million. And the Premier League alone, clubs spent at least £84 million, which is not a lot compared to past transfer windows, but we look forward and we move on. So just to get us started, Wes, in terms of the January transfer window, before we kind of delve into the winners and losers, what's your kind of overview of the whole transfer window in January?
I think the sort of January transfer window in itself, I think it can be too much of a distraction for clubs and players. Obviously the fixture schedule is manic during January. Games coming thick and fast, and I think clubs trying to build momentum, but then managers in press conferences constantly getting asked about transfer activity and things like that. Players, looking at perhaps getting unsettled during that sort of month period as well, because they might be being touted for a move away or things like that. But those figures that you mentioned there don't really surprise me too much, given the circumstances that we're in with the pandemic and whatnot. Obviously, I think there's been a lot more loan deals this time around than probably ever, to be honest. And that's probably why you get that Premier League spend anyway of 84 million there. So yeah, but I think January as a transfer window, on the whole, it's mainly, I think I was listening to Nigel Pearson yesterday, and he said it's more for those clubs that are trying to sell players, really, and obviously sort of clubs lower down the bottom end of any sort of league table, really. They're the ones that have got to try and do something to try and get themselves out of where they are. But I think with the Premier League, especially, like if there was a closer gap, I think, between the bottom 3 and maybe the 3 clubs above them in the league table, I think we'd have perhaps seen a little bit more activity from those clubs. So yeah, that's just my view on the January transfer window as a whole, really. And this one in particular, don't know about you, and don't know if you had anything else on it, to be fair.
I never get really excited when it comes to the January transfer window. Like you said, I think it's more focused on getting players out the door, depending on obviously the club situations. As you said as well, regarding the pandemic, I think this is one of the lowest kind of spent transfer windows that we've had in recent memory. So it's completely understandable why we have figures as low as 84 million, especially from the Premier League alone, which is known for its spending power as well. So I'm not too surprised. One thing I did want to ask is, it's something that just came to mind right now in regards to the January transfer window, and how I think there's been argument in regards to how sometimes it should potentially be scrapped, and how leagues should just have one huge, obviously, summer window and just work from there from the entire season. What's your view on that? I wanted to kind of get your opinion on that. Do you think that's something that it could potentially happen in the future? Would it be fair for teams if they all just committed to having one big summer window and then forgetting January and just working from having one window each season?
It's quite interesting actually, because I think it wasn't until we had almost sort of two transfer windows. You could almost sort of buy players when you wanted, really. And then I think they've tried to, you know, stop that and go, right, these are your two windows to operate in. If you haven't got what you need, then that's that. I think if you're gonna have a transfer window in mid-season, I know a lot of leagues around the world have them. Obviously, the Premier League tried to introduce it, had it last season, but then I think due to the pandemic, it's not really happening this time around. But a winter break. So I
Yeah,
think if the winter window coincided with the winter breaks, I don't think it would be as bad. But because as I said earlier, those teams that are constantly playing all the time, like you're looking at the Premier League, it seems like teams are playing every three or 4 days at the moment. Obviously,
yeah,
I know playing catch up with the fixtures, but how unsettling is it perhaps for a player when they're maybe just in and out of the team a little bit? Rumors that they're going here, there, and everywhere, and things like that. So, yeah, I personally wouldn't scrap it.
yeah,
I'd maybe just look at tweaking other areas of the fixture calendars to make sure that players are a bit more settled. And obviously, I know that managers and coaches, they don't particularly like talking about players from other clubs, out of respect. So, yeah, I think if there's, say, a break in the season, even if it is that month break, but if you have the winter break, say, in the middle of the window, then I don't think it will be as hectic or as frantic perhaps as it would be. Yes, you'll probably get some clubs that will do business early and some that will do business late. I think that's going to happen. That happens in the summer window anyway. Um, but yeah, I think if you had that break in the middle, it's almost like, right, we've had these, say, 2 weeks, for example, whereby, okay, what do we need? Clubs assessing their squad, say, at the start of the window or just before the window, and it's like, right, 2 weeks, then right now we're having a break, right, what is it that we actually, and then in that last, say, week of the window, they can look to try and get players into the building that they feel that they need.
yeah. Uh, I really like your argument on that. I think one thing that you brought up to mind, especially, is the thing that how obviously the most common thing that the other four leagues share is the winter break. So, like you said, I think it was a trial that happened last season. Somewhat worked, somewhat didn't. Um, you can make the argument that for the players' case, it helps for rest, but for us as fans and broadcasters that lose out on money not being able to broadcast those games, you could argue that the Premier League kind of needs that congested fixture schedule. Even though you see, this season Jurgen Klopp has really voiced his opinion regarding the fixture list being really congested enough. I'm not sure if he's even got fined for that, but it's something that you constantly hear come out of his press conferences. So as we kind of look deeper in the transfer window, Wes, we want to obviously discuss the winners and losers of this transfer window for 2021. So we'll begin first on the winners side. In terms of who you think, either as a club or player, who do you think has won this January transfer window?
Premier League wise, this is going to kill me because I think Arsenal have done the best business in this window. Um, it's been a common theme for Arsenal over the last few windows that they need to get Deadwood out of the building. For
Yeah,
one reason or another, that has not happened until this particular window. I think most of my mates are Arsenal fans, and I see a lot of them saying about players that aren't good enough, the likes of Kolasinac, Mustafi, Socrates, um, and obviously with the Ozil situation, I think Arteta and the guys at the board there at Arsenal have done brilliantly well to get the Ozil situation finally resolved, because I think that was a situation that wasn't doing anybody any favours,
Yeah.
and it became a bit of a joke. It was almost that, well, when Arsenal lost, why aren't you playing Mesut Ozil? Why aren't you where's Mesut Ozil? Where's Mesut Ozil? Instead of where's Wally, it was where's Mesut Ozil kind of thing. Do you know what I mean? So, yeah, obviously getting that resolved, fantastic. Ozil's happy because he's now at a club that he supported as a boy. So both clubs there, or both parties there, the real winners with that one. Mustafi getting out the door. Don't know how Arsenal have managed to do that, but I think every Arsenal fan is absolutely buzzing. I think every sort of rival fan is now a bit disappointed, because it was just funny just watching Mustafi defend, and then you question how the guys won a World Cup. Kolasinac going out the door, I think that's another good bit of business. I don't think he was good enough for Arsenal. My only worry is that you're playing, say, Cedric Suarez out of position, and now you may lost a little bit of cover there defensively. But is it a case of, right, we'll get the player out the door that's not good enough, and then we'll deal with the cover as and when we need it. Socrates going out the door, I mean, that was a bit of a strange signing for me in the first place, but I think Arsenal fans quickly worked out he wasn't that great, and it was good to again get him out the door, and then sending two kind of young players out on loan in Willock and Maitland-Niles. I think both in their time at Arsenal have really been in and out of the side. Like, they've not had that consistent run of games. I do feel a little bit for Maitland-Niles, because he came through Arsenal's academy as a central midfield player, and then all of a sudden he comes into the first team and he's playing completely out of position as a fullback or as a wing back. So I do sort of feel for him in that respect. And now he's almost being tarnished with this fullback wing back role, when actually he wants to play in midfield. But I think that's why West Brom have got in ahead of a couple of other clubs, because they want him to play in midfield, and they feel he will give them what they need in that midfield area. And the signing of Odegaard as well on loan for Arsenal is, he's a fantastic player. Will provide Arsenal with what they need towards that top end of the pitch, and the Arsenal fans that I know were buzzing that they've managed to get him in the door, even if it is another player from Real Madrid on work experience. So yeah, that Arsenal for me, Premier League wise, it pains me to say it, but I think they've probably done the best business in the window, just in terms of, as I said, getting players out the door that you would look at and go, well, they've tried to shift them for a bit of a long time, and nobody's really taken them. So to finally get them out is all right. It's probably better late than never, but at least they've done it now, and now they can forward plan for the summer to then strengthen accordingly.
As you know, me being an Arsenal fan myself, Wes, I was excited for this transfer window when everything was done. I think it was really good that you touched on the points regarding the young players and Joe Willock and Maitland-Niles. Maitland-Niles, I think, is now 23 years old, so I wouldn't consider him a young player anymore. I think there's a certain limit that you get to. Once you go over that age, you're not considered a young player anymore. And that's the problem we have as Arsenal fans. We still see a player that was brought in through the Hell End Academy, and they may be 24 years old, but we still see them as a young prospect. So I think Maitland-Niles is now obviously a grown man himself. He's somehow got call-ups to the England squad, but he's seen, I think one thing that I give credit to him is that he's seen the opportunity that, okay, if I've been able to get in this England squad, playing bit part Arsenal, what can I do potentially starting regular games for West Brom? So it will be interesting to see, like you said, his how Sam Allardyce uses him. I think, West Bromwich Albion want to use him in midfield. So I think we might see the best of Maitland-Niles yet. Joe Willock is someone that I've had, 50-50 opinion on, because he has he reminds me a bit of a Aaron Ramsey type box to box, has that energy. But it's just, again, that consistent run of games, or whenever he's been called up to the starting lineup, he doesn't seem to produce in those moments when Arteta's entrusted him to start. Again, with Odegaard, like you said, Madrid, work experience. We're just going to have to wait and see, because I'm even worried that it could be a Denis Suarez situation where he just doesn't play at all or doesn't get any games. But a lot of Arsenal fans have been arguing, does this stunt the growth of Emile Smith-Rowe? I don't think so. I think it provides more competition for him. It actually gives him more rest too, because I think since the Boxing Day game we played against Chelsea, we won 3-1, and he's pretty much played every game since. Like you said, congested fixture list, 2 or 3 days, or 2 to 4 days where we're playing games. I think Smith-Rowe will definitely need that rest. So Arsenal, yes, they've done a good window. Again, I don't know how we've got some of the players that we've had out the door. I'm really happy for Ozil, because I fell in love with him when he first joined Arsenal, and that signing in particular in that last decade, I think signalled a change in Arsenal's transfer approach, because we were never known for spending that kind of money on a world-class player like Mesut Ozil. And then you've seen us brought in the likes of Lacazette for 52 million, or Aubameyang for nearly 60 million. And then we have, obviously, we don't want to get into Nico Pepe, but, 72 million. It just kind of shows that Arsenal are now not afraid to make that jump in spending that kind of money. But we wish him farewell, for me as a personal Arsenal fan. But so like you said, Arsenal, one of the winners of the transfer window. One thing I wanted to bring up quickly is, I think before yesterday, I wouldn't have seen this side as a winner. But after the quick signings that they made, I think I can personally count Liverpool in there, because they had to buy defensive cover. I think Matip has been now confirmed to be out for the rest of the season. So Liverpool needed to go and make those signings. With my trusted laptop here, it showed Ben Davies from Preston and Ozan Kabak came from Schalke, 2 defensive covers. So I think Liverpool, before yesterday, you would have considered them a loser because they didn't, work on that. But I think they kind of brought in the defensive cover they needed. But we'll have to wait and see whether these players obviously are able to provide that security in defence, because obviously we know they're not the likes of Virgil van Dijk, who I'm sure we know Liverpool have missed throughout the entire season. They've obviously gone through a run of form now. I think the last 4 or 5 games where even before they scored against you guys, against Tottenham, they hadn't scored a Premier League goal for 5 games. So that in itself was shocking, considering how well they performed last season and absolutely destroyed the league. But I wanted to get your opinion regarding Liverpool's kind of business.
I think going into deadline day, I think everybody was worried for Liverpool, as you mentioned there, sort of lack of defensive cover. I think they knew about Matip. I think they knew that he would be out for the rest of the season, and that's why they bought 2. I think they were in the market for maybe 1, but then once they found out about Matip, it was like, no, go and get 2. I think they were on a very, very tight budget to get some defensive cover in. The fact they've managed to do it and still have some change to spare by all accounts, you have to applaud the guys doing the deals over at Liverpool for that. Ben Davies, a lot of talk about him obviously in the last sort of couple of days. Looks, from what I've seen, a very, very good centre-back. Everybody's been talking him up, saying he could quite easily play in the Premier League. But I think, again, there's one thing saying that a player is ready to play in the Premier League, but then, you're talking about the Premier League champions here in Liverpool. Like there's standards that need to be met and maintained throughout your time there. Good thing for Ben Davies, though, he's left-footed. Will give a good balance to that Liverpool defence. Good range of passing. Is very, very comfortable on the ball, very accomplished, can bring it out as well. So that one, astute signing. I think it was a case of dotting the I's and crossing the T's for him to go to Celtic on a pre-contract, because his contract was up in the summer. But I'm sort of looking at it from Preston's perspective and going, well, if everybody's talking up a talent that you've got, why have you let the player get into this part of his contract? Like, why haven't you perhaps pushed for him to extend his stay? obviously he may have rejected a contract with Preston. He may have felt like it was time to move on, but I think he's pretty much sort of come through that, and he's had a few sort of loan spells here and there as well. But yeah, it just seemed a bit of a strange one for me from a Preston perspective to let somebody so highly thought of and so highly regarded go. For so cheap. I know they would have lost him in for a free anyway, so they're probably grateful that they could get that fee for him. In terms of Kabak, I think he was linked with a few clubs in the summer. I think David Wagner, the ex-Schalke coach, talked him up to Jurgen, and that was sort of the deal breaker for Jurgen to sort of go and sign him. But Schalke are down there in the Bundesliga.
Yes.
Well, now the fact they've got Kolasinac and Mustafi, it's going to be interesting to see how that works. But I think Kabak's been touted as, again, another really, really good young defender. There doesn't seem to be many of those about. So I think the fact Liverpool potentially have brought in two of within that category, I think speaks volumes. And I think there's an option to buy for Liverpool on that loan deal as well for about 20 million or something. That could be a good one there. I don't know if Matip is going to stay at Liverpool much longer. I think I don't know if Klopp's sort of running out of patience with him because he can't trust him, he can't rely on him at all. I think with Liverpool, and one of my really, really good friends is a Liverpool fan, and I used to just say to him all the time, he'd go like, "Oh, we ain't got any centre backs," and I said, "Well, what about the two young lads? Give them a go." Like, I think Klopp has done it sparingly, but I think he definitely wanted to play one of them alongside a more experienced player, as opposed to just playing them both together. But I do sometimes think, what's the point in having academies and having almost top performing academies when there's no real pathway then into the first team? Obviously, we've seen that in years gone by with Chelsea and even City to a certain degree. It just felt for me like, well, you've got Phillips and Williams and even Sepp Vandenberg, who's gone to Preston on loan. It's part of the Ben Davies deal. So it's like, we got three centre backs there. Yeah, they're young, but give them a go. You never know what might happen. You've really got nothing to lose because if they play well, then you've got another good option. If they lose, you can sort of put it down to inexperience and the fact they're still learning the game. But I don't think Klopp wanted to take that particular risk, from an outsider looking in. But it seems like he's got more senior those two that are coming in seem more senior centre backs now. And like I say, with Ben Davies being left-footed as well, I think that will help massively. So you have to sort of put Liverpool up there because they've got what they needed. And I think that's always a good sign when a club can get what they need in a transfer window.
Well said. We'll have to, like you said, we'll have to wait and see if the defensive cover will push them up the table because they currently sit fourth right now. They won their last two games, and we'll have to see from there. I think they also got Minamino has also gone on loan to Southampton as well. So you could argue that's a good bit of business for him to get more Premier League experience for them to come back and then kick on in the summer. So Arsenal, Liverpool are winners of the window. We'll come back to the winners section in a bit, but we'll now look at the losers side of the transfer window. Wes, is there any club or player you think that has lost out on this transfer window and actually didn't take advantage of it?
I think the kind of obvious one that screams out, unfortunately for a lot of people, is Delhi. I wouldn't say he's lost out to a certain degree, because it's not, he didn't sort of have a move and then it broke down.
Yeah.
By the sounds of it, he wanted to go to PSG. PSG wanted Delhi, but the decision maker, Daniel Levy at Tottenham, didn't want Delhi to go. So, I think, there's a lot of Spurs fans that are asking, how's Delhi not getting in the team? Well, he's injured at the minute, so that's probably why. I think at the same time, I think you're looking at his situation now and you're going, I think there was a lot of Spurs fans that just wanted him to go and play. But the thing is, when I've had this discussion with a lot of Spurs fans and seen it on social media, and it's like they're clamming for, they're championing Delhi to play. But if you see them putting down their what they feel is Tottenham's strongest 11, Delhi doesn't feature. So you can't have it both ways. I think, he's probably lost out in the sense that, he's not been playing regularly for Tottenham, as we all know. Obviously Euros at the end of the season. So, I think it was potentially an opportunity for Delhi to go, but ultimately the decision maker at Tottenham, Daniel Levy, didn't want him to go and wants him to fight for his place. I think now it's important that he's got to accept that his move hasn't happened, and that he's got to, fight tooth and nail to get himself back into the Tottenham fold when he's fit. Because there's no doubt that he's a talented player, and one that Tottenham miss, which I think is the strangest thing, because in times like within games we miss Delhi, but he's like, well, he's not playing or he's not in the squad or anything like that, but it's like, well, we miss him and we can see that we're missing him, but something's happened behind the snes between him and Mourinho. So from my perspective as a Spurs fan, I'd love that to get resolved, and I'd love to see Delhi back playing in a Spurs shirt. A club that I think, well, I was a bit surprised that they didn't do anything really in January was Sheffield United. The fact that they are cut adrift at the bottom, I don't know if that played into their thinking, where they go, look, we're miles off, we'll just ride it off and plan for the Championship. But I thought they'd give it a bit of a go. I thought they'd maybe get one or two in just to try and give the place a bit of a lift. Obviously, we spoke about Sheffield United and Chris Wilder a few weeks back. Often wondered what they would do, but it just seems a bit strange that they're sort of accepting defeat, which hasn't been Sheffield United's way in recent times. So, like I say, that was the strange one for me. Sheffield United not doing anything, considering how far off. Well, considering how far off they are, but you'd like I say, you'd like to think they'd have given it a go and tried to do something to try and give them a bit more of a fighting chance. I think as well, I wouldn't say a surprise, I wouldn't say a loser, but a club that I think potentially might need to be mentioned is Burnley. Obviously with their takeover that has happened, it kind of seems like the owners are still getting their feet under the table at the minute, but a little bit surprised that they didn't try and do a little bit of something in this window, unless the players simply weren't available for them. But I anticipate Burnley to spend a little bit in the summer and whatnot. I think obviously with the pandemic, the fact that the takeovers happened in this time period, I don't think has helped. So like I say, I fully anticipate Burnley then to perhaps strengthen in the summer. But I'd probably say player wise, a loser, Delhi more than likely, and then a club, I'd probably say Sheffield United.
I'm glad you mentioned Delhi, because he was on my list for regarding play in terms of a loser. Like you said, I think we all know that his best run of games, his best form came under former manager Pochettino. So I'm sure he had those dreams of reuniting back in France with him. I actually think, even though, yes, he lost out on potentially getting back and being reunited with Pochettino, I actually think he wouldn't have done a lot at PSG. I don't know. I think it's just the manner in which he is as a player, his personality. I just don't think that would have meshed with the rest of the PSG squad. I think he's an enigma. I actually personally think he's an enigma, not in a bad way, but I think he has that fire that I don't think some of the PSG players can match. But at the same time, I think you argue, obviously, whenever you move to a foreign country, obviously, new club, new language, all of that. So to settle in, I think he'd probably be the only person out of, I think probably less than 10% of the squad, I think, speaks English. Like, he could probably, get Mbappe's number and that and chat to him. But apart from that, apart from Pochettino and him, I just don't. I think he would have struggled to get used to the surroundings. I think in terms of football playing wise, I think he could have done the business because I think the French league is obviously much slower than us. He could obviously there's more time on the ball for him to have, and like you said, he's a talented player. But yeah, you could argue that he lost out in terms of him just getting regular game time because we don't know, between now and the end of the season how important of a figure he will be. So a club. I'm glad you mentioned Sheffield as well. Another club I wanted to mention and obviously get your opinion on, which I'll expand on now, is Newcastle. Now, Newcastle, I think, like for the Geordies listening, I think they obviously they find themselves at the bottom half of the table, and they haven't had obviously the best of starts to this season. We know that they brought in Joe Willock on loan, which I actually think would be a good addition in terms of their midfield, having an engine to maybe accompany someone like John Joe Shelby, who sprays the ball about with his range of passing. They got rid of Rolando Aarons and DeAndre Yedlin. But I just think because of the bad run of form that they had, do you think that they should have used this January window to maybe strengthen the squad, or do you think it's more of an internal issue that maybe lies with the manager? That lies with the manager.
Well, Newcastle, one of the biggest enigmas I think in English football. Look, the fans don't like the manager. The fans don't like the owner. The owner, that's fact. Like anybody that knows anything about football know that. From the outside looking in, it seems like Mike Ashley is he's chilling. Obviously Bruce is getting a lot of stick for the way Newcastle are playing at the minute and things like that. So Ashley must be buzzing because they're all moaning at Steve Bruce and not moaning at him for a change. I think transfer wise though, it seemed like midfield was the area that Newcastle were targeting. I don't think they made any secret they wanted Hamza Chowdhury from Leicester on loan. But I think there was, quite a few bits that needed to happen in order for that deal to go through. So I think Matty Longstaff needed to go to Watford, and then Chalobah was going from Watford to Leicester, I believe. So obviously that didn't really happen. I think getting Willock in, decent signing. But I think it's not getting. I don't think it's sort of the players really at Newcastle. I think, you look at sort of playing styles, they've not been great. I think the fans there when Rafa was there accepted the style of football that they played because that was all Rafa had, and he didn't really have the level of investment that Bruce has had, and the backing almost that Bruce has had at Newcastle. So yeah, and it was almost like, right, okay, Bruce has come in, we want to see something a little bit different, but Bruce has almost, if you like, stayed playing the same way. If not worse, with a similar group of players. And I think Newcastle fans are just a bit fed up. I think they want to see a little bit more from their team. So yeah, I don't think it's more of a transfer issue. I think Maitland-Niles was even being linked with Newcastle. So, but I think they wanted him to kind of come in and replace Yedlin, and as we've said, I think Maitland-Niles sort of wants to play in midfield. So yeah, it's a bit. I think Newcastle have still got a nucleus of championship players or good championship players that they probably can't get rid of. So yeah, I just think, like I said, I don't think it's a transfer thing. I think there's other factors with Newcastle at the minute as to why they are where they are.
Yeah, agreed. I just thought I'd mention them just because they kind of sat on the bench for me regarding whether they lost or won the window. Like you said, maybe it isn't a transfer issue. It could be just down to the way that they're playing. But one of them, like you said, like you put it best, enigmas, one of the most controversial. But now we go back to the winner's side, Wes. One player that I wanted to mention in regards to the winner's side, because now I think we've kind of addressed the clubs that have maybe won and lost. this transfer window. But in terms of certain player, movements I want to focus on two and get your opinion on them because I really like them as players. And I think they've benefited from actually moving away from the club as well. So first is Fikayo Tomori, who's gone to AC Milan. And second, which I only found out today, I don't know how I didn't even see, I saw this morning, is Damari Gray to Bayer Leverkusen.
Okay.
Now, these are two players that I really like. First, Tomori. We saw him come in, obviously, with Lampard when he came in. I like how you felt sorry for Maitland-Niles. I feel the same way for Tomori because I felt as though he was only used the majority of last season because of Frank's restrictions in the transfer market. Frank had to dip into the young players, and it turned out Tomori was there, used him. When he had a run of games, we saw how good he could be. I think Chelsea went on an unbeaten run. Not an unbeaten run, but I think they just kept winning a number of games, and I think they had a good defensive record up to a certain point. And Tomori and Zuma, everyone was talking about the relationship at the heart of Chelsea's defence. Now, this season, Thiago Silva's been brought in. Tomori's not even had a sniff. I think he's had a couple cup games. And he's now moved to AC Milan, which I think is a good move for him. People argue that, yes, Milan are fighting for the title. Obviously, they're currently first in Serie A. But I think this will be good for him to get a bit more game time. The league as well is completely different. So him being used to the fast-paced Premier League that we enjoy and see every week, I think he'll quickly fit in to the Milan side. Again, you've got Damari Gray, who hasn't got a look in really since Brendan Rodgers has come in. And with him going to Bayer Leverkusen, I think this is another opportunity for him, to be another one of those English talents like Jadon Sancho, who's burst on to the scene in the Bundesliga. So I wanted to get your what you think, if you kind of agree with me on those two signs, or if you think maybe one of the just give me. I'll leave the floor.
I think both of them are winners in the sense that both out of favour, both managed to get a move. I think the Tomori one's really surprising. I think it's probably the more surprising out of the two, given that he was in like Chelsea's team last season. I think the fact that they didn't shift Antonio Rudiger in the summer has potentially hindered him a little bit, because it was almost as if Rudiger was ahead of Tomori in the reckoning at Chelsea, it seemed. So, and then obviously Tuchel has come in. Obviously, I know that deal was done before, but who knows? Like Tomori might come back and actually be a better, more all-rounded defender, just from being in Italy. We all know sort of what Italians are like with their defending. So, he could come back and be a better defender for actually going out on loan. But great move for him. I think he was he was linked with Newcastle actually on loan in the summer window.
Yes, he was.
So that would have been another good move for him, because he would have played a little bit more. But I think going to AC Milan, I mean, one of the stalwarts, if you like, of European football over, certainly my time growing up, and stuff like that. So I think Tomori has done well to get that move, and credit to the powers that be to get that one over the line. Again, a bit like you, do feel a bit for him, because I think he's a decent defender, but I wouldn't say he's sort of anything more than that. But with a good run of games again, sort of this season, he could have really sort of kicked on. And whatnot. He's been a bit unfortunate, but like I say, great loan move for him to go out to Italy and to AC Milan. As you said, a team fighting for the title. He might actually end up winning a title this year. So I think everybody was a bit sort of taken aback by it, because it looked like Rudiger was the more out of favour centre half at Chelsea, as opposed to Tomori. But great move for him, for sure. Damari Gray. Now, Damari Gray is a player that I like as well. I've liked a lot, even when he was at Birmingham. I really, really liked him, and wish that perhaps Spurs had bought him a couple of times. But with Damari Gray, it seems that ever since he sort of signed for Leicester, seems like he's been in and out of the team. Like he's never been able to cement a spot in the team, or anything like that. So yeah, it's been a bit of a strange one. I think he's got great ability. I think, if you're looking at it now from a Leverkusen perspective, you'll have Leon Bailey on one wing, Damari Gray on the other.
Yeah.
I think, you could definitely think of worse wingers to have at your disposal. And as well, they've got Moussa Diaby of Leverkusen as well. So now their front line have got another option. But yeah, I think Damari Gray has been a bit disappointing. Like when he burst onto the scene at Birmingham, and he got his move to Leicester. I think there was perhaps bigger clubs at the time that were after him, but he chose Leicester. He then obviously won the Premier League, and then he's just stagnated, which is a real shame. But yeah, hopefully now he can sort of restart his career over in Germany. Obviously he was out of contract in the summer anyway, so I think Leicester have done well to get that one done. So obviously they get a fee for him. So yeah, no, Damari Gray, a good move for him, and I think as well a winner of the transfer window might be Josh King.
I was just about to get onto him because I know he was someone that you discussed as even though he wasn't in this year's top flight, you argued that he's very underrated. He would have been in your underrated 11 if he was still in the league. So I'll let you go ahead on Josh King.
Yeah,
speak to me about that.
Josh King, obviously, it looked well. He came out last summer. Obviously when Bournemouth went down, he had a year left on his contract. Said he wasn't going to sign a new one. Probably it's such a powerful position, I think, for a player when they come out and do that. They sort of hold all the cards. He hasn't really been used by Bournemouth. I think there was, West Ham were sniffing in the summer, didn't get that one over the line. I think last year he was being linked with Man United. Again, that one didn't happen. And I think it's almost like his time at Bournemouth was just sort of ran its course. A player that again I really like because he's annoying, I'd say, Josh King to play against. Like he pops up in different areas. He's like he can play up top, but he likes to drop in deep in between the lines, and he does a lot of unselfish work for others, and I think he was key to Bournemouth's Premier League team sort of ever since he signed. He was always one that would play more often than not. And when he did play, he put in some really good performances, scored some important goals for them. I actually thought he would probably go to West Ham in this window because obviously they needed a striker after selling Haller. But the fact he's gone to Everton, and it's a deal that's only till the end of the season, I think is a shrewd bit of business because obviously Everton have got Moise Kean out on loan at PSG. So, if he comes back, then, he can, after that loan spell, he can come back and give Calvert-Lewin a bit more competition up top. But I think that was a signing that perhaps Everton needed to do in terms of getting in a forward player. But I think the good thing with Josh King is he can play across the front line.
Yes, of course.
He's got that versatility as well, which I think will help Everton massively. So I think that one is a really good signing.
I'm really happy. I'm really glad that you put Josh King in there. He's a very underrated player. 29 years old, still has a lot to offer. A Norway international as well. So, and he does bring, like you said, that Premier League experience to hopefully help Everton. And obviously, we don't wish for any injuries to happen on players, but worst case scenario, Calvert-Lewin goes down, then you've got that cover in Josh King. So, I'm glad that you put him in there. In regards to the losers section, we'll before we finish off, we'll go back to the losers section.
Yeah.
One player that kind of sits on the fence between winner and loser, but I wanted to bring him up is Josh Maja. Josh Maja has gone to Fulham on loan from Bordeaux, which is something I found out this morning as I woke up.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I found this a bit strange simply because for anybody who does not know Josh Maja, he came up from Sunderland's academy. And the only way I found this out through watching Sunderland's Netflix documentary.
Yeah.
So for those of you who have not watched that, me and Wes would definitely highly recommend for you to watch.
100%.
What's the name of the show?
Sunderland Till I Die.
Sunderland Till I Die, yeah. So if anybody wants to have a look at a football TV series, yes, Sunderland, we recommend that highly. But that was where I first came across Josh Maja. Was highly regarded, I think, at the club. Came in, did his performances, and then ended up getting the move to Bordeaux. Now this season, he's actually scored 9 goals. So I actually think he's done well over there in France. So for him to come back in the Premier League, I wouldn't say it's a step back, but in terms of, me looking at it from Josh Maja's perspective, I'm trying to really understand why would he take that move to the Premier League if he's going on a good run of form, already scoring 9 goals in a league that is obviously weaker than the Premier League. But if he maybe continued that form, until the end of the season, he may have sanctioned a better move. I'm not saying Fulham is a bad move, but I think I'm worried that he may not. I guess what I'm saying is I'm worried that he may not replicate that, those goals that he's been doing for Bordeaux, and then bring them for Fulham. But we'll have to wait and see. What do you think about this?
In the words of Thierry Henry, let me talk to you about Josh Maja. Really, really interesting one, this, because before he was at Sunderland, he was actually at Fulham. So he was a Fulham youth team player. So, bonus for him. He knows the place. He knows his way around. Obviously then went to Sunderland. From the documentary, did really, really well in League One. A bit of a fun fact, if you like. Obviously, Josh Maja was at Sunderland. His contract was running down. It would have cost Sunderland, I believe, in and around the region of about 250 grand to keep Josh Maja at the football club. They then sold him to Bordeaux for however much that was. I can't quite remember now, but they bought in Will Grigg for £3 million, rising to £4 million. If anybody's seen the second series of the Sunderland documentary, you will know that one goes down to the wire. Will Grigg has scored 2 goals in 5 years, 5 goals in 2 years, at Sunderland, and has then rejoined MK Dons on loan for the end of the season. Josh Maja this year, or since he's been at Bordeaux, did really, really well. When he sort of first got there. But I think this season has been a bit difficult for him. Yes, he's got 9 goals, but I don't think he's played as much as he would have liked. So, for him to come in at a Fulham side who desperately need a centre-forward. They desperately need a centre-forward. The way they play, it seems like Mitro is no longer suited to the way that Fulham play. Because I think before it was get the ball into Mitrovic and play off of him. But I think Fulham now are a bit more progressive as a team. I think this is a tidy bit of business because Fulham needed a centre forward. I think they were in for Josh King as well, who would have been brilliant for Fulham. It'd have been absolutely brilliant. It'd have been almost perfect for them. But it looks like Josh Maja was the one that they really, really wanted. And for them to get that over the line, I think is fantastic. He's quick. He knows where the back of the net is. He's got experience of playing in England. Just be interesting to see how quickly he can adjust to the Premier League. I don't think he's had too much exposure to the Premier League, but looking at it, from the outside looking in, it was one that, again, Fulham desperately needed that centre forward, and they've managed to get one in Josh Maja, who is mobile as well. I think he could probably play in a 2 alongside Mitrovic, but then also play as that main striker. So should be a decent move, and fingers crossed that one works out really. And there is a player, Nelson, for me that has potentially had a bit of a loss this transfer window, and that's Eric Garcia.
Yes, very good.
Manchester City centre back. Obviously, he's out of contract in the summer. Strong rumours that he's agreed a deal to go to Barcelona in the summer as a free. But I think there was rumours again that he wanted to push that one through early. Obviously, that's not happened now. He slipped. I wouldn't say he was up there anyway with City centre halves with the talent that they've got, but he's found his chances a bit more limited this year with the form of Diaz and Stones, and Laporte coming back from injury as well. So potentially Eric Garcia was one that maybe missed out on getting that move that he really wanted, a little bit similar to Delhi, really.
I'm glad you mentioned Eric Garcia. I didn't think he was originally on my losers list, but I think Josh Madger just came up like in a split second, so I thought I'd kind of mention him. But it's interesting you mentioned, like you said, really strong rumors. Like I think it's clear for everyone to see that he wants to go back home. I think he came up the Barca Academy, so I completely understand it. And this, I don't know about you, but personally, I always feel that there's certain countries. So, for specific, if you come from a certain country, there's always you're always tied down to that place. I think England's one of them, and I think Spain, especially in football, you see a lot of Spanish players. There always seems to be like if they haven't succeeded in a certain league, then they will likely go back to where they came from. Like one person that comes to mind, I hate to bring up for you, is Roberto Soldado. Like
Oh, Bobby.
he came, and I think at Valencia he was like, I think you guys were gassed when you bought him originally because I think the goal record he had in La Liga was amazing, and then who knows what happened. I mean, at his time at Tottenham, we just don't know what happened. Like beat down.
Yeah, I mean, I'm still scratching my head with that one. To be fair, now.
But obviously, after that, he's obviously gone back to the Liga. So, yeah, you could even argue if we're looking from an outside perspective out of the Premier League, you could argue that because Eric Garcia lost out on Koeman's side, I think injuries really crippled Ronald Koeman. So I think Barcelona as well have lost out without bringing Eric Garcia to them as well. One more. It isn't necessarily a club or a player, but I actually think it's us as fans. As fans, we obviously like to see the massive blockbuster deal that normally comes, with a transfer window, but we didn't get that, during this January transfer. So I think we're going to have to wait to the summer. It was definitely a quiet window, but I think we'll be very excited for the summer because you've got the likes of Messi, Mbappe, Pogba, Haaland, who are likely going to be, in the papers regarding moves. So hopefully the summer will bring up a whole circus of blockbuster transfers. I wanted to ask you, Wes, now looking outside of the Premier League, have you noticed any transfers that have impressed you? Any transfers that have kind of confused you in terms of winners and losers outside of the Premier League?
I think I'm not going to try and pronounce his surname because I'll be here all day. But the lad Dominic from Salzburg going to Leipzig, I think for about 20 million is a steal. Yes. If you play Football Manager, then you know about this guy. He's ridiculous. So yeah, I think that's a really good deal. Getting him into a more established league in Europe. And playing in a very decent side as well will help. EFL wise, now there is a club that's very close to my heart that have done some incredible business this January, and that is Milton Keynes Dons. The fact that it seemed like they were having a mini fire sale with the set in the sense, and it was a lot of players sort of towards the back end of the pitch. Or they had Colton Morris on loan from Norwich. His contract was up. Norwich recalled him, sold him to Barnsley. So, and they had Stephen Walker on loan from Middlesbrough. He then went back and has subsequently gone on loan to Crewe. They had Richard Keogh, who they brought in on a free. He's then gone to Huddersfield. That was like an unbelievable deal because he was only on a 1-year contract. That's sort of been cut early in a couple of months, and still managed to get a fee for him. And that deal is only till the end of the season that he's gone to Huddersfield as well. George Williams going to Bristol Rovers. Regan Paul went to Lincoln, which was a bit of a surprise for me. And Bailey Cargo, I think, went to Forest Green Rovers. So there was sort of 6 players that went out, and you go in, blimey, what's going on here?
Oh.
But the business that they've done has been fantastic. Ethan Laird on loan from Manchester United. When you're a club sort of League One, League Two, and you get a player from Manchester United, I think that's always exciting.
Yeah.
Good young player, can play as a fullback or as a centre half as well, probably more as a fullback or a wing back. Then they've brought in Matt O'Reilly, was once upon a time at Fulham, attacking midfielder. I think that was sort of something that they needed. I think they were a bit over reliant on Scott Fraser, who was another free transfer that they got in the summer and has been fantastic for them. They then got Zach Jules yesterday, good left-footed player. I think at times Don's played with a back three with Lewington as the left-sided centre-back. So, again, really, really good player for that. Harry Darling as well from Cambridge, managed to get him in. Exciting defender, 21 years old. Got Charlie Brown in from Chelsea. I think he's UEFA Youth League all-time top goal scorer or something ridiculous along those lines. So, yeah, another really, really exciting one there. They extended the deal for Andrew Sherman, whose experience has brought in a lot, and Andrew Fisher, the goalkeeper, who's come in and has been really, really good. And one of the main men, if you like, one of the more stellar signings is Will Grigg. I mentioned him earlier. I think everybody's buzzing that he's sort of back and whatnot. I think even he's buzzing. Said that when he heard of MK Dons' interest, it was a case of trying to get that deal done and over the line. Obviously, a loan deal there till the end of the season. I'm a bit excited for my local team, MK Dons, because they've done some really, really good stuff, and they're in a really, really decent sort of position considering they're going through a massive sort of transition period. Only 9 points off the playoffs, and still with a lot of football to play. And with those signings that have come in, you just feel like if they can gain a bit of momentum going into the second half of the season, they could be there or thereabouts come the end of the season. And obviously had a massive win as well at the weekend against AFC. So yeah, I think everybody's buzzing. Everybody's buzzing around Milton Keynes at the moment. Dons fans anyway. So it's sort of like they got players out, but then replaced them with sort of good young prospects, if you like. That then if they play well, then the club can make a good bit of money on. So, and I think that's sort of where a lot of clubs, League One, League Two wise, are really at. Trying to get players in, and then have they got that resale value? Can we make some money off the back of them? It was almost like scrolling through Twitter, and it was like nearly every other day it seemed that there was a new signing at MK Dons. They've been busy this window, for sure. So yeah, I'm excited for them. Definitely excited for them. That's probably the two, if you like, that have really sort of caught my eye.
Cool. I hope we'll have to see, like you said, end of the season, 9 points off the playoffs to see if they can sneak into those playoff spots. I wanted to stick quickly into the EFL and talk about Henry Lansbury, who's gone from Aston Villa to Bristol City on a free. I think that's a good bit of business, knowing his quality, what he can bring to that Bristol City side. Another EFL transfer, which is actually a player departing from the EFL, is Gerard Deulofeu from Watford to Udinese. Now, Deulofeu is an intriguing one for me because we all know his quality on the ball is ridiculous. Like, we're talking an abundance of ability on the ball. He's someone that, again, I think he's an enigma, but at the same time, like, it seems like he can never stay at a club for more than like 2 or 3 years. And it seems as though one of those seasons ends up to be like a ridiculous good season, and then the next season is like he shows a dip in form. Obviously, when Watford were in the league last year before they got relegated, he was obviously one of the bright sparks. But I think obviously with them being in Championship, you'd expect him to be one of the players, just like Doucouré when he got his move to Everton. Mm-hmm. You'd expect him to be one of the players to have left by now. So I think it was about time. I think he'll bring obviously good quality to Udinese. I'm not sure where they are in the Serie A table, but they have gone on a good run of form recently. So it'll be interesting to see that. I agree with you on that.
I think just to touch on Watford. Sorry, it was just to touch on Watford. done some interesting business, I think. Obviously, Etienne Capoue went to Villarreal.
He did, yeah.
Deulofeu, that transfer kept someone in the Pozzo family busy with the accounts, because obviously they own Udinese as well. Domingos Quina went on loan to Granada, so again keeping somebody in the accounts department busy because they also own Granada. But the two that have really sort of surprised me almost was the fact that James Garner's loan got cut short from Man United, and he then has gone to Forest because he came in earlier on in the season and was playing really, really well. Obviously, we know Watford love to change their manager, so it's no surprise that that's happened again. But I think obviously he's not played too much under the new manager, but it was a bit surprising because of how well he had played previously that he wasn't potentially getting that look in now. And then also Glenn Murray, that loan deal, then again getting cut short, and he's gone to Forest as well. Again, it was a bit of a surprise move for me anyway. But then again, I didn't see too much of Glenn Murray playing at Watford. So it was almost like, well, why'd you bring somebody with that experience in if you're not gonna play them? But I think he'll do really, really well at Forest. Obviously, he's got a manager that knows him really, really well in Chris Hughton. But yeah, those were the two that sort of surprised me a little bit from a Watford perspective, in terms of they've got them in previously, but didn't with Glenn Murray especially not playing him too much, and then so with the change in manager, it's sort of hindered James Garner in his development.
Really good point that you touched on. I was giggling when you mentioned the Pozzo family and obviously like them owning Granada and Udinese. So yeah, like you said, it's no surprise that Watford have those links with Granada and Udinese. Before we wrap up, just to touch on some of the main transfers on price. I'm here on The Guardian right now, and some of the major transfers that happened was, again, me and Wes do not know how to pronounce this surname, but Dominic Szoboszlai, I'm sorry if I pronounce it wrong. He moved from Salzburg to Leipzig for 22.9 million. Said Benrahma moved from Brentford to West Ham United. I think that's a shrewd bit of business from West Ham because we all know Benrahma was a baller at Brentford last season. Nearly brought them up, promotion.
I think with that deal, it was almost get that one sorted so then West Ham could bring in Jesse Lingard, but I think West Ham might live to regret not getting in another centre forward. Relying on Antonio, I think his hamstrings are made of elastic bands or something because they always seem to go every sort of 5 games or something like that. So yeah, I was really, really surprised West Ham didn't look to get a centre forward in anyway.
Benrahma, 20 million. You mentioned, centre forward again. Sebastian Haller moved to Ajax for 20 million. Again, that's a bit of, I don't know if that's a bit of shrewd business, but then you look at the fact that Dusan Tadic, when he went to Ajax, has done crazy things. So I can imagine Sebastian Haller actually doing well at Ajax. You've also got Amad Diallo, signed for United from Atlanta for 18.7 million. Morgan Sanson, 16 million from Marseille to Aston Villa. Nicolo Rivera from Genoa to Juventus. And to top it off, we have also Gerard Deulofeu. Those are the top transfers that happened this January. Like we said, no blockbuster deals, but I mentioned some of the names like Mbappe, Pogba, who is been rumoured to leave this summer. Hopefully there'll be more big names for the summer transfer window. But thank you very much for joining us on this episode of the January Transfer Window 2021 special. All that is left for me to say is please, again, follow us on our social media channels at WM32 Football. And again, the shop is live and direct, so visit us at wm32football.com/shop. Thank you, Wes. Thank you for joining me this episode.
Not a problem. Take care.
Thank you. Thank you to everyone who tuned in, and we look forward to seeing you next time on WM32 Football. Bye-bye.
Cheers. See ya.